finally lost my patience and left home after sister-in-law and her husband moved in uninvited, wrecked our house and turned my husband against me. The next day he called, "I'm so sorry. Please come home." So I came back and saw, "My name is Sarah, I'm 28, and I work as a nurse at Memorial Hospital. My husband Henry is 31, and manages operations at a local logistics company. We've been married for 3 years and live in a small but comfortable house that we've made our own. Well, at least it was supposed to be our own." The source of all our problems? Ashley, Henry's younger sister. She's 10 years his junior and, to put it bluntly, she's a handful. While most people her age are finishing college or starting careers, Ashley bounces from job to job like it's a sport. She didn't even bother with college, claiming studying wasn't her thing. Instead, she spends most of her time partying with friends and, more importantly, spending money she doesn't have. "Henry, I'm totally broke again," her voice would crackle through the phone, sometimes multiple times in a single day. "Can you help me out with groceries?" Or, "Big brother, my phone's about to get cut off. I need just a little help. And my personal favorite, there's this amazing party tonight, and I have absolutely nothing to wear. Every single time, and I have absolutely nothing to wear. Every single time, and I mean every time," Henry would cave. The amounts were never huge, but they added up, and Ashley never seemed to think about paying him back. Not that Henry ever asked. What really got under my skin was her habit of showing up unannounced at our house. She'd just waltz in and plop herself down on our couch like she owned the place, staying for hours on end. After a 12-hour shift at the hospital, the last thing I wanted was to come home to Ashley's endless chatter about her latest drama. "Can't you at least ask her to call before she comes over?" I asked Henry one evening after a particularly trying day. "Sarah, you don't understand," he'd say, his voice taking on that defensive tone I'd come to know all too well. "It's different for us. Mom worked double shifts most days just to keep food on the table. I was all Ashley had growing up. I practically raised her myself." That was his go-to explanation for everything concerning Ashley. Their mother had worked herself to the bone to provide for them, often leaving Henry to take care of his baby sister. Now, it seemed like that responsibility had become permanently etched into his identity. Just when I thought I couldn't take another surprise visit or desperate phone call, Ashley dropped a bombshell that would change everything, or so I thought. "I'm engaged," she burst through our front door one Sunday afternoon, practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. "And guess what? We're moving out of state after the wedding." I tried my best to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was doing cartwheels. Henry, of course, had a different reaction. "Out of state?" he asked, his voice wavering slightly. "That's pretty far, Ashley." "Don't worry, big brother," she said, giving him one of those bear hugs she was famous for. "My fiancé Mark has an amazing job there, and we'll visit all the time." When we met Mark the following week, I was pleasantly surprised. He seemed like everything actually wasn't: responsible, level-headed, and most importantly, financially stable. He worked in software development and actually had a 5-year plan that didn't involve mooching off relatives. For the first time, I felt like maybe things were going to work out. The wedding came 3 months later. Despite my relief at the situation, I found myself getting caught up in the excitement. Henry and I went all out on their gift, a top-of-the-line home entertainment system that cost more than I cared to admit. But hey, if it meant Ashley would be entertained in her own home instead of ours, it was worth every penny. The day they left for their new life in another state, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Our house was quiet, our evenings were our own, and our bank account was remarkably stable. Sure, Ashley would pop up on Skype calls now and then, but it was nothing compared to the constant presence we dealt with before. A year passed, and life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Then came the news that Ashley was pregnant. When she told us over Skype, her face glowing with happiness, I found myself genuinely sharing in her joy. Even Henry seemed more relaxed about his sister, now that she had her own family to focus on. "They're doing really well," Henry said one night after a video call where Ashley had shown off her growing baby bump. "Mark got a promotion at work, they bought a new car, and the baby's room is already set up." "They are," I agreed, curling up next to him on the couch. "You did good, you know? You helped her get to where she needed to be." For the first time in years, everything felt perfect. Ashley was happy, Henry was content, and I had my husband back. If only I'd known then that this was just the calm before the storm. It was a Tuesday evening when my world turned upside down. I remember it clearly because I'd just finished a particularly exhausting shift at the hospital, 3 emergency cases back to back. All I wanted was to come home, take a hot shower, and maybe convince Henry to order takeout. Instead, I walked into what looked like a tornado had hit our living room. The first thing I saw was Ashley, lounging on our couch as if she'd never left, bouncing a 6-month-old baby on her knee. Her husband Mark sat next to her, engrossed in something on his phone. Henry was perched on the armchair, wearing the biggest granite scene since their wedding day. The floor was littered with bags, baby toys were scattered everywhere, and our usually tidy coffee table was buried under a mountain of dirty dishes. I stood in the doorway, my work bag still slung over my shoulder, trying to process the scene before me. This had to be some kind of stress-induced hallucination, right? Sarah, Ashley squealed as if this was a totally normal situation. Surprise, we're here. Mark got this amazing promotion offer at work. They want him to transfer to their office here. Can you believe it? It's like fate or something. Mark barely looked up from his phone, just giving a slight note of confirmation. We've always talked about moving closer to Henry, Ashley continued, not seeming to notice my stunned expression. And when this opportunity came up, we just knew we had to jump on it. We'll stay here just until we find our own place. It won't be long, I promise. I glanced at Henry, hoping to see some sign that he was as blindsided by this as I was. Instead, he was beaming like a kid on Christmas morning. Isn't it great, Sarah? He said, practically bouncing in his seat. Having everyone close by again. I mumbled something about needing to take a shower and escape to our bedroom. My mind was racing. Our house barely had enough space for 2 people, let alone 4 plus a baby. And knowing Ashley's track record with temporary arrangements, I had a sinking feeling about this whole situation. Later that night, after Ashley, Mark, and the baby had settled into our spare room, which was really more of a storage space with a futon, I confronted Henry in our bedroom. You could have given me some warning, I said, trying to keep my voice down. This is our home, Henry. Our space. We should have discussed this first. Henry sat on the edge of our bed, running his hands through his hair, something he always did when he was stressed. I know. But they just showed up. What was I supposed to do, turn them away? They're family, Sarah. They're your family, I corrected him. And yes, you could have at least called me before letting them move in. It's only for a month or 2, he assured me, though he wouldn't meet my eyes. They just need time to find their own place. Ashley said Mark's new job pays really well, so they'll be able to afford something nice. I sighed heavily, knowing that I was fighting a losing battle. 1 or 2 months, I repeated. That's it, and they need to help out around the house. Of course they will, Henry said quickly. Ashley's grown up a lot since having the baby. You'll see, everything will work out fine. I agreed reluctantly, more to end the conversation than because I believed it. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a baby crying in the next room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a huge mistake. Life with our new houseguests quickly settled into a routine, though not the kind I'd hoped for. While Ashley spent her days at home with the baby, Mark headed off to his new job, usually returning around 5 p.m. Henry would get home about an hour later, and I'd typically arrive last, usually around 7:30 after my extended hospital shifts. That first week, I tried to stay positive. It's just an adjustment period, I kept telling myself. But as the days went by, my optimism crumbled faster than yesterday's leftover casserole, if there had been any leftovers, that is. Every evening, I'd open our front door to the same scene, chaos. Pure, unadulterated chaos. Dirty dishes would be piled so high in the sink that I couldn't even see the faucet. Baby toys created an obstacle course across our living room floor. Stray socks, burp cloths, and what looked like half of Ashley's wardrobe decorated every available surface. Ashley? I called out one particularly bad evening, carefully stepping over a trail of scattered Cheerios. Have you been home all day? Yeah, she responded from the couch, scrolling through her phone while the baby played on a blanket nearby. Why? I bit my tongue, hard. The answer was everywhere, in the unwashed bottles cluttering the counter, in the overflowing diaper pail that no one had bothered to empty, in the general disaster zone that used to be my tidy home. Before they moved in, I had a system. I'd cook dinner every other night, making enough for leftovers, so I could have a break the next evening. It was perfect, cook one day, relax the next. But now I'd come home exhausted after a 12-hour shift of dealing with medical emergencies, open the refrigerator hoping to find yesterday's chicken stir-fry, and find nothing. Not even a stray bean sprout. Oh yeah, that was really good. Ashley mentioned one evening when I stared into the empty fridge where my carefully prepared lasagna should have been. Mark loved it too. You should make it again. The worst part? She said this while sitting on our couch, surrounded by empty takeout containers from her lunch, clearly not seeing any connection between my missing dinner and her obligation to contribute to the household. I closed the refrigerator door and leaned my forehead against it, trying to remember what it felt like to come home to peace and quiet, to a clean house, to food in the fridge. It felt like a distant dream now, replaced by this new reality where I was apparently running a hotel with full catering services, minus the paying guests, of course. After 2 weeks of living in this chaos, I finally snapped. It happened on a Thursday evening when I came home to find Ashley and Mark watching TV while their baby napped, surrounded by the day's worth of dishes, empty snack packets, and what looked like every baby toy they owned. "We need to talk," I said, switching off the TV. "All of us." Ashley looked up at me like I just interrupted the most important moment of her life. "Hey, we were watching that." "This is more important," I insisted, taking a deep breath. "Look, if we're all going to live here together, we need some ground rules. Everyone needs to pitch in with the cooking and cleaning." Mark suddenly became very interested in his phone while Ashley rolled her eyes. "Sarah, come on, we're guests here." "Guests?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Guests don't empty out the entire fridge. Guests don't leave their mess everywhere. Guests usually leave after a few days." "This isn't even my house," Ashley shot back, her voice taking on that whiny tone I'd grown to hate. "I'm not comfortable cooking in someone else's kitchen. It stopped being someone else's kitchen the moment you moved in here. You're living here, eating here, making messes here. You need to help maintain the house." "I have a baby to take care of," Ashley protested, gesturing toward the nursery where her son was sleeping. "I can't do everything." "You're not doing anything." The words burst out before I could stop them. "You're home all day, but you can't even wash a dish or throw together a simple dinner?" Ashley's face crumpled into that familiar pre-crying expression I'd seen her use on Henry countless times. Right on cue, she jumped up and ran to find her brother, who had just gotten home and was changing out of his work clothes. Within minutes, Henry was in the living room, looking at me with that disappointed expression that made my blood boil. "Sarah, can we talk privately?" he asked, gesturing toward our bedroom. Once the door was closed, he turned to me. "You can't talk to Ashley like that. She's struggling enough as it is." "Struggling?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Henry, I work 12-hour shifts at the hospital. I deal with actual emergencies, sick people, life and death situations. Your sister sits at home all day watching TV and can't even be bothered to wash a coffee mug. She has a baby to take care of," Henry defended her, just as he always did. "You don't know how hard that is." "No, I don't know how hard it is to ignore your child while scrolling through social media all day," I snapped. "But I do know how hard it is to come home after a long shift and have to clean up after 3 adults who apparently never learned how to use a dishwasher." "Sarah," Henry sighed, running his hands through his hair. "She's my sister. She use a dishwasher." "Sarah," Henry sighed, running his hands through his hair. "She's my sister, she has a baby. We have to help them. Just give it time. Everything will work out." I stared at him, suddenly feeling very tired. It was the same argument we'd been having since we got married, just with higher stakes now. Ashley would always come first, and I would always be expected to understand, to accommodate, to give in. Remember how I said Mark seemed like a responsible guy when we first met him? Well, add that to the growing list of things I've been long about lately. Turns out, he's just Ashley in Maliform, minus the constant begging for money, but with an extra helping of laziness. Every evening, like clockwork, he'd come home from work, grab a beer from our fridge, that he never replaced, and a beer from our fridge that he never replaced, and plant himself on our couch. The most exercise he got was lifting the TV remote or reaching for the game controller. "Hey, Sarah," he called out one evening as I was making dinner. "Could you grab me another beer while you're in there?" I was in the middle of cooking dinner, again, while Ashley scrolled through her phone, and he played some shooting game on his brand new gaming console. Yes, the same console he bought with his first paycheck at the new job, while still not contributing a single dollar to groceries or household expenses. "The fridge is 10 feet away from you, Mark," I replied, stirring the pasta sauce with more force than necessary. "I think you can manage." He didn't respond, just kept playing his game. The console must have cost at least $700, but heaven forbid they chip in for toilet paper. Living in such close quarters meant I was privy to every aspect of their lives, whether I wanted to be or not. Our house wasn't exactly built for 2 families, the walls were thin enough that I could hear everything that happened in their room. And I mean everything. The baby's crying was the worst part. He'd wake up almost every night, his wails echoing through the house. What followed was always the same. "It's your turn," Ashley would groan. "I have work tomorrow," Mark would snap back. So, I'd been with him all day. Then you should be used to it. Their arguments would escalate, voices rising until they were practically shouting, while their poor baby continued crying. Most nights, I'd lie awake, counting the minutes until either one of them finally gave in and attended to their child, or until the baby exhausted himself and fell back asleep. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, a glimmer of hope appeared. I got approved for 3 days of vacation time. 3 blessed days away from the chaos, the mess, the constant noise. I'd already found a nice little bed and breakfast outside the city, and I was counting down the days until I could escape. But of course, Ashley had other plans. Sarah, she cornered me in the kitchen one morning, wearing that fake sweet smile I'd come to dread. "I heard you've got some time off coming up." I should have denied it. I should have run. Instead, I nodded. "That's perfect." She clapped her hands together. "Mark and I were hoping to visit my old friend from high school that weekend. You could watch the baby for us. I mean, you're a pediatric nurse, right? You're literally qualified for this." I stood there, coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth, as she continued chattering. "We really need a break, Sarah. The baby's been so demanding lately, and I'm just exhausted. You understand, right? It's just 3 days, and you're already going to be off work anyway." "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. I've had these plans for weeks. I need this break." "Break from what?" Ashley scoffed. "All you do is work and come home. Try taking care of a baby all day." "All day, you mean when you're not watching TV or scrolling through Instagram?" The words came out sharp and fast. "I'm not canceling my vacation to babysit while you go party with your friends." The argument escalated quickly, with Ashley's voice rising to that shrill pitch that always gave me a headache. That's when Henry walked in, home early for work for once. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. "Your wife is being completely selfish." Ashley jumped in before I could speak. "I asked her for one tiny favor, and she's acting like I'm asking her to donate a kidney." I turned to Henry, certain that this one time, he'd see reason. "I have 3 days off, Henry. 3 days I was hoping to spend with you away from." I gestured at the mess around us. "All of this. But your sister wants me to cancel everything to babysit while she goes on vacation." "Well," Henry shifted uncomfortably and my heart sank. I knew that look. Maybe we could help her out? She and Mark really could use a break. Something inside me snapped. "A break?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What about my break? What about our break? When was the last time we had dinner together without your sister interrupting? When was the last time we could relax in our own home?" "Sarah, please," Henry started, but I was already moving. I walked straight to our bedroom, pulled out my suitcase, and started throwing clothes into it. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. "What are you doing?" Henry followed me, panic in his voice. "Taking my break," I replied, zipping up the suitcase. "You want to help your sister so badly? Fine, you can babysit, I'm done." I walked out of that house with nothing but my suitcase and car keys, ignoring Henry's calls behind me. The drive to my friend Lisa's vacation house took 2 hours. 2 hours of alternating between crying and feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. The next day, around noon, my phone rang. It was Henry. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," his voice was desperate. "Please come home." They left. "The baby's here with me. They said they were going to the store 3 hours ago. I've been calling and calling, but they won't answer. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes already knowing what was coming next. "Ashley's posting on Facebook," he continued, his voice breaking. "Pictures of them at some beach party. She wrote about how she needed this break from mom life and how she's finally feeling free again. Sarah, I can't do this alone. I was so wrong. I broke every speed limit on my way home. When I walked through our front door, the scene that greeted me was worse than I'd imagined. The house looked like it had been ransacked, dishes piled everywhere, baby clothes strewn across every surface, and in the middle of it all sat Henry, looking completely shell-shocked, trying unsuccessfully to comfort a screaming baby. "I don't know what he wants," Henry said, his voice cracking. "I've tried everything, feeding, changing, rocking." Taking the crying infant from my husband's trembling hands, I switched into nurse mode. Within 20 minutes, I had the baby fed, changed, and sleeping peacefully in his crib. Then I turned my attention to Henry, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Go take a shower," I told him gently. "I'll start cleaning up." It took hours to restore some semblance of order to our house. By the time I finished cooking a proper dinner, Henry looked more like himself again. We ate in silence, both exhausted, but relieved to have a moment of peace. That peace was shattered 2 days later when Ashley and Mark burst through the door, tandem laughing, loaded down with shopping bags. "Oh my God, you guys, we had the best time," Ashley gushed, not even glancing at her baby. "The beach was amazing, and there was this incredible club. When are you moving out?" Henry's voice cut through Ashley's chatter like a knife. The room went silent. "What?" Ashley blinked at her brother. "We haven't even started looking yet. I mean, we'd been so busy." "You have 2 days," Henry said, his voice eerily calm. 2 days to find a place and get out of our house." Ashley's face crumpled into her familiar crying routine. "You can't be serious. We're family. This is all because of her, isn't it?" She pointed at me accusingly. "She's turned you against me, your own sister." "No, Ashley." Henry stood up, and for the first time in his life, he looked truly angry with his sister. "This is because of you. You abandoned your child to go party. You've been taking advantage of me for years, and I let you because I thought that's what family does. But family doesn't treat each other like this. I can't believe you're doing this to me," Ashley sobbed. "After everything we've been through, I'm your little sister." "You're a parasite," Henry said quietly. "You've been using me your entire life, and I was too blind to see it." "Well, I see it now. Get out. Today." They packed and left within hours, Ashley alternating between crying and screaming about how we'd betrayed her. The moment they drove away, the house felt lighter somehow. The next day, Henry and I deep cleaned every room, erasing all traces of the chaos that had consumed our lives. As we collapsed onto our couch that evening, finally alone in our own home again, Henry turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I should have listened to you years ago. I just always thought I had to take care of her. I never realized she was taking advantage of that." It's been months now and we haven't heard from Ashley. She doesn't call, doesn't text, doesn't even try to guilt Henry on social media anymore. Sometimes I catch Henry checking his phone, hoping to see a message from his sister, not asking for money or favors, but just a simple apology. So far, it hasn't come. But we're okay. Our house is peaceful again, our marriage stronger for having weathered this storm. And Henry? He's finally learned that sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to stop enabling them.